"Look, everyone, here comes the diva's kid to make a fool of himself." Blake's harsh cackle reverberated throughout the auditorium, while other students exchanged knowing looks filled with spite. Under the harsh spotlights, 16-year-old Marcus Johnson stood isolated on the performance platform, staring out at rows of pale faces wearing sneering expressions. Westmore Academy represented everything about elite private education, wealthy students flaunting influential family connections, and oversized attitudes. Here, teenagers drove expensive vehicles and competed over who could host the most lavish gatherings. Marcus represented the institution's token scholarship recipient, a young black student from Oakland who'd earned full funding while his mother, Vivian Johnson, traveled globally as a celebrated soul music icon. "Your microphone is ready, Mr. Johnson," Principal Reynolds announced with artificial pleasantness. "Since you were so eager to join our talent competition, we're all curious about your preparation." Snickers rippled through the crowd. Everyone understood Marcus hadn't volunteered willingly. Blake and his crew had falsified his registration as part of their elaborate scheme to embarrass him. "Let's discover if artistic ability is hereditary," they'd whispered in the corridors. Marcus had never performed publicly before. Actually, he deliberately concealed any connection to his mother's profession. Not from embarrassment, Vivian Johnson commanded respect as a 5-time Grammy winner, but from exhaustion at constantly being labeled simply as the famous singer's son. During his 6 months at Westmore, he'd existed under that shadow while working tirelessly academically to demonstrate his individual merit. Strangely, nobody seemed to recall his mother's race when requesting selfies or concert passes. Yet when they sought to diminish him, his skin color suddenly became prime ammunition for their disguised harassment. "We're still waiting, Marcus," Principal Reynolds persisted, tapping her fingers impatiently. "Or will you surrender now?" He sensed the weight of their stares, practically feeling the anticipation of his failure saturating the atmosphere. In the rear section, Blake and his allies held their phones ready, prepared to document his humiliation for their next viral embarrassment video. "I haven't prepared anything specific," Marcus stated, his tone quiet yet steady. "How unfortunate," the principal responded with exaggerated disappointment. "Perhaps another time would be better. Actually, I believe I can manage something," he concluded. Sudden quiet descended over the auditorium. From her front row position, music instructor Mrs. Rivera observed him with an indecipherable expression. Just 1 week prior, she'd discovered him alone in the music classroom after hours, humming softly while reading a history textbook. He hadn't realized her presence until sheet music clattered to the floor. "This isn't necessary," Mrs. Rivera whispered now. She alone at the school truly understood him. Marcus drew a deep breath. 2 paths lay before him. Exit the stage in defeat or reveal a side of himself he'd always protected. He closed his eyes momentarily, feeling something ignite within his chest. Not merely anger, but quiet resolve. He recognized that sensation. "I'll perform something my mother composed," he declared with surprising composure, though she never recorded or shared it publicly. Surprised murmurs swept through the auditorium. Even the cruelest students seemed intrigued. An unreleased Vivian Johnson composition was worth hearing. What Westmore Academy didn't know was that before Vivian achieved fame, before the Grammys, and sold-out venues, she was simply a single mother singing lullabies to her child in a modest Oakland apartment. Marcus had grown up not just hearing her voice, but learning from it. As he adjusted the microphone, his gaze met Blake's, who maintained his mocking smile. However, something in Marcus's calm, determined expression made the bully's grin waver. Momentarily. Continue with engaging storytelling hook for subscribers. "What's your delay, Johnson? Do you need Mommy to perform for you?" Blake shouted, triggering another wave of laughter. Marcus shut his eyes and inhaled deeply. When he spoke into the microphone, his voice emerged as barely a whisper. "This piece is titled, Invisible Roots." Then he began to sing. His opening note trembled initially but quickly gained strength. The soulful ballad contained jazz influences, demanding both vocal precision and emotional authenticity. Marcus's voice, defying everyone's expectations, wasn't just melodious, it was remarkable. Deep and rich, with a timbre that seemed impossible for someone his age. In the third row, Blake stared in bewilderment. This wasn't following their script. Their planned humiliation was transforming into something entirely unexpected. Marcus sang about roots growing beneath concrete, invisible, yet powerful, about carrying ancestral history in his bloodstream, about maintaining wholeness in a world attempting to fragment you. Each word, every note, seemed to peel away layers of his carefully constructed facade. From the front row, Mrs. Rivera watched, with glistening eyes. She'd witnessed something rare in that music room the previous week. Not just raw talent, but the discipline earned through years of dedicated practice. After the sheet music fell, she'd asked why he concealed that voice. "Because I refuse to be the kid performing his mom's songs," Marcus had replied with a shrug. "And I won't be the diversity project who sings. I want respect for more than my surname or skin color." Rivera understood completely. As a Latina pianist who'd left performing to teach, she knew intimately the burden of labels and expectations. "But denying your gift means denying part of your identity," she'd told him then. Now, as Marcus's voice filled the auditorium, Rivera realized he'd finally grasped that lesson. Too late, she noticed Blake slipping through the side exit, whispering with two companions all wearing smirks. The song reached a brief instrumental break, and Marcus opened his eyes. Some students had stopped recording. Others appeared genuinely impressed. Principal Reynolds frowned, clearly reassessing her opinion of the scholarship student. That's when the sabotage commenced. Stage lights began flickering wildly. A piercing feedback screech cut through the sound system. Someone had infiltrated the technical booth. Marcus hesitated, missing a note, but persisted. When audio returned, a harsh electronic beat overlay his voice through the PA system. Blake's friends were obviously attempting to transform his performance back into mockery. The audience looked confused at the stage chaos. Some laughed, assuming the interference was intentional. Others whispered, recognizing the sabotage. Principal Reynolds stood to intervene. But before she could act, something remarkable occurred. Marcus adapted his voice. Rather than fighting the intrusive electronic rhythm, he embraced it, modifying the song's tempo and converting the disruption into music. Years observing his mother improvise during rehearsals and concerts had taught him to transform accidents into opportunities. Blake and his friends' expressions shifted from malicious satisfaction to disappointment. The audience, moments earlier expecting disaster, now witnessed a genuine musical tour de force. Students still filming began swaying to the music. Some raised phones with flashlights activated, creating a concert atmosphere. The song now possessed its own life, greater than the humiliation that had sparked it. When the performance ended, the following silence lasted merely 2 seconds before applause erupted. Not polite or obligatory clapping, genuine, spontaneous, amazed appreciation. Thomas, a front-row student and real estate heir normally loyal to Blake, became the first to rise for a standing ovation. Others followed suit. Blake remained seated, arms crossed, face twisted in bitter resentment. His expression conveyed everything. "This isn't finished." Backstage after the applause, Mrs. Rivera found Marcus trembling slightly, adrenaline still coursing through his system. "You anticipated they'd attempt something like that, didn't you?" she asked quietly. Marcus nodded. "Blake had already mentioned preparing a surprise for my performance. That's why I selected that song. My mother wrote it specifically for improvisation and audience adaptation. And you knew it well enough to overcome the sabotage," Rivera added admiringly. "They completely underestimated you." "They always underestimate me," Marcus replied with a half-smile. "Is that why you decided to perform despite knowing about the trap? To prove a point?" Marcus hesitated. "Not exactly. Singing was never my intention. But last night, after discovering the forged application, I received an email." He paused, seemingly deciding whether to continue. From Berklee College of Music in Boston, a scholarship program for exceptional talent. My mother submitted a recording of me singing without my knowledge. The teacher's eyebrows rose in surprise. That's among the nation's premier music schools. And they want a live audition next week. Marcus rubbed his face. Can you believe my own mother never mentioned she considered me talented enough? Rivera touched his shoulder gently. Sometimes parents recognize potential we don't see in ourselves. Their moment was interrupted by students entering the dressing area, all wanting to speak with Marcus. Among compliments and questions about his mother, few noticed Blake lurking in the doorway, his gaze cold and calculating while typing furiously on his phone. Savor this moment, Blake whispered, when he finally approached Marcus. I've ensured it will be temporary. Something in his voice, a disturbing confidence, sent chills through Marcus. Whatever Blake was planning exceeded flickering lights or sound interference. That evening, returning to his campus dormitory, Marcus received a notification. Someone had uploaded his performance video to the school's social media. Beyond just the video were the comments below. The first, from an anonymous account, read, "Discover the truth about Marcus Johnson's talent and why his mother keeps him hidden from the public. Link in comments." This was only the beginning. The next morning, Marcus's phone buzzed constantly. Notifications flooded his screen. Messages, comments, shares. The video Blake posted wasn't simply the performance footage. It was a malicious compilation interspersing Marcus singing with old Vivian Johnson clips, suggesting he merely imitated her without original talent. The caption was devastating. Exclusive. Why does diva Vivian Johnson hide her son from the stage? Sources confirm he was rejected by every record label for lacking originality. Tragic. Fake talent. Charity project. Marcus felt his stomach drop. This wasn't their first attempt to tear him down, but never so publicly and cruelly. Stop ignoring my calls, his mother's voice echoed when he finally answered. Vivian Johnson was many things, an international superstar, an incredibly busy, single mother, but never someone who tolerated injustice. I just saw that garbage they posted. I'm catching the first flight home. Mom? No, Marcus protested. That'll only worsen things. Blake would love turning this into more drama. Silence stretched across the line. You're right, Vivian finally admitted. This is your story to tell, but let me help in other ways. In his dorm room, Marcus stared at the ceiling. Beside him, his roommate Eli, a quiet kid from Chicago with whom he barely exchanged words, surprisingly offered assistance. My father's a defamation attorney, Eli said without looking up from his laptop, and I understand digital tracking. Marcus looked at him, puzzled. Since when do you care? Eli finally glanced up. Since hearing you sing yesterday and seeing what they did afterward, some boundaries shouldn't be crossed. In the music room, Mrs. Rivera was mounting her own offensive. As student newspaper advisor, she had privileged access. Look at this, she said, showing Marcus a folder of computer files. I've been recording all student council meetings for 3 years for transcription purposes. Guess whose voice appears throughout the files? Blake's voice discussed openly how he manipulated the disciplinary committee, grades, even previous bullying cases against other scholarship students. It was an unwitting confession of systematic patterns. This is... Marcus hesitated. Pure gold, Rivera finished. We just need the right timing. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Blake, intoxicated by his apparent online attack success, called a special student council meeting, where he served as president, to discuss artistic integrity issues in the talent show. He didn't know Marcus had been warned by Thomas, the boy who'd first stood to applaud. In the large auditorium, the student council assembled with school administration. Blake appeared confident, impeccable in his custom blazer, while Principal Reynolds watched him with obvious admiration. We have evidence that certain participants used inappropriate technical resources to artificially enhance their performances, Blake began, casting a calculated glance at Marcus. sitting quietly in the back. That's when the auditorium doors opened. It wasn't Vivian Johnson entering as everyone, including Marcus, had expected. Instead, a middle-aged black man in a simple but elegant suit appeared, Richard Torres, multiple Grammy-winning music producer and Marcus's godfather. "I hope I'm not interrupting," Torres said in a voice accustomed to commanding recording studios. "Mrs. Rivera invited me to discuss potential partnerships with Westmore's music program." Blake blinked, confused. This wasn't the confrontation he'd anticipated. "Mr. Torres," Principal Reynolds rose promptly, recognizing the renowned producer. "What an unexpected honor." "The honor is mine," Torres replied, walking down the center aisle. "Especially after viewing this circulating video. I was impressed by this young man's talent." The principal looked puzzled. "Video?" Rivera activated the projector. The screen didn't display Blake's defamatory montage, but the original unedited footage of Marcus's performance, including the moment lights flickered and electronic beats invaded. "As a producer with over 20 years' experience," Torres continued, "I recognize raw talent when I see it, but what impressed me most was this." The image changed, now showing Blake and his friends storming the technical booth, clearly visible tampering with equipment during Marcus's performance. "Security cameras," Rivera explained softly to the stunned director. "Installed after last year's vandalism incident." Blake paled. That's taken out of context." "And so is this?" Torres asked as the screen changed again. Now it displayed screenshots of Blake's messages planning not only the show sabotage, but also the smear campaign. "Let's destroy the black kid before anyone discovers he's superior to us," one message read. The auditorium fell deathly silent. "How did you—" Blake stammered, searching the principal's face for support. "Your friend Thomas felt compelled to—" "Clear his conscience," Marcus explained, finally speaking. "He handed everything to Eli and Ms. Rivera last night." Principal Reynolds looked like she'd aged a decade in 10 minutes. "Blake, report to my office immediately." As Blake staggered out defeated, Torres turned to Marcus with a smile. "So you never told them, did you?" Marcus shook his head, a small smile forming. "Told them what?" Rivera asked. Torres smiled more broadly. "That besides being a producer's godson, Marcus recorded an entire album in my studio last year. An album scheduled for release next month." Shock and understanding spread across everyone's faces. "It's true," Marcus confirmed calmly. "I didn't want anyone to know. I wanted judgment based on my own merits, not my mother's name or connections. But now," he glanced at the door through which Blake had left in disgrace, "now I think it's time for my music to be heard." And so what Blake had planned as ultimate humiliation became the public revelation of a talent the entire world would soon recognize, no longer as Vivian Johnson's son, but as Marcus Johnson, an artist in his own right. By day's end, 2 videos circulated online, one of Marcus's incredible performance and another of Blake being escorted off campus, his humiliation permanently recorded for millions of viewers. Sometimes the cruelest jokes result in the most unexpected and just conclusions. If this story of transformation and justice moved you, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales showing how sometimes the greatest victories emerge from the cruelest situations. Share in the comments if you've ever experienced someone trying to diminish your worth and how you responded. Because the most powerful lesson from Marcus Johnson's story isn't that talent eventually conquers prejudice. It's that when we know our true value, no one else has the power to define us.